Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. Before I call the meeting to order, I just ask that you silence your cell phone, that's myself included, so that we don't have distractions and we can make sure we pay attention to all the important business of the town. Before I get started, I just wanted to open with a message of unity and strength in this community. I know that we have a lot of people who are affected by the changes that are happening right now. The members of this council are not without also personal effect. But together, this town is stronger. Together we are stronger, and we can rely on one another, and that doesn't really matter what kind of viewpoint you support. You can be your brother's keeper, you can be your neighbor's keeper, and this town weathers real storms, actual hurricanes, straight line winds, disasters. I have seen it, I have lived it. We are so strong, and we're gonna stay very positive. Please know that your local government is paying attention. We are aware, we have our ear to the issues, and we are here to support one another. I also want to say to my fellow council members that we're all here to support one another as well. And that's how this town is, and it's one of the best qualities that we have. It's part of the reason that I love it here. We are going to work tirelessly for the town of Colonial Beach, for our residents, advocating for our priorities. This town is number one, and we have a lot of work to do to be prepared for this tourist season and a number of other challenges that we have. And we are going to move forward with the work that we have to do as a town and that priority for first and foremost. And I just encourage that you support also your neighbor to both sides, to either side through this. And with change comes immense opportunity. And we are also looking at a number of opportunities. And so we have a very positive outlook on that. With that, I'll go through my regular announcements, which is that we do ask for your patience and understanding as council deliberates on the various agenda items we have tonight. We do have open public comment at all work sessions and all regular meetings. We welcome you to come to the meeting and sign up. The sign up sheet is in the front. When we have specific public hearings, there will be separate sign up sheets. We do not have a specific public hearing tonight. But when there are those, they'll be separately addressed. And I just want to acknowledge the hard work of our staff and their preparation. Their insights are invaluable to all the topics of town business. I want to appreciate our town manager and the council manager form of government, because it's our town manager, Natasha Tucker, who handles the daily operations, department administration, and this council provides direction and authorizes policy in accordance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia and our town charter. While each council member has the ultimate responsibility to contribute and vote distinctly, the town council does work as a body. We are here to support each other, and duly elected, we serve responsibly and ethically to the citizens of the town of Colonial Beach. Participation of each member contributes to effective leadership, and collaboration is key to productivity in local government, especially with the challenges we have ahead of us. We're going to engage in constructive discussion, remain open to different perspectives, and work together for effective resolutions. I just finally remind you that all meetings of the town council are formal proceedings and they are recorded. And with that, I call the meeting of the town of Colonial Beach to order at 6:03 p.m. Roll call of members. All members are present. The amendments to the agenda, I would like to propose an amendment to the agenda to put B and C of the consent agenda down in new business. So that would become C and D of new business.
Second.
Okay. There's a second to that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it. And then approval of the agenda as amended. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Any nays to that one? Okay. Keep moving forward. Next up is the consent agenda for the meeting minutes. Is there a motion for the consent agenda? For the meeting minutes?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any discussion for the meeting minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving the meeting minutes? Aye. Excellent. Great. All right, next up is the council member liaison and commission reports. I will start. I know some of us haven't met yet. We're still getting in our seats. We're still getting kind of new to this new year. So we'll start though with Mr. Wood and work our way down.
Good evening, everyone. The first thing I want to address, as one of our citizens announced at the last meeting, there was a bird that was ill, acting suspiciously, not in the town, but close to our town. The town was waiting for the necropsy to come back, and there's a press release that's on the town website and the Facebook page, and it goes as follows. The Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources reports increasing cases of avian influenza in wild birds, particularly in coastal areas associated with migration. To protect public health and prevent the spread of the virus, let's do these following things. Don't touch sick or dead birds. Report findings of multiple dead birds or sick raptors, eagles, fowls, hawks, owls to the Department of Wildlife Resources at 855-571-9003. And again, this is all on our website and on our Facebook page. If removal is absolutely necessary, and I really can't think of too many instances where they are, wear gloves and a mask, double bag the bird, and dispose of it in a secure trash can. Wash hands and disinfect clothing after handling wild birds. Again, I would suggest that you follow the first three recommendations. The Colonial Beach Volunteer Fire Department Ladies Auxiliary is going to have dinner February 8th, soup and salad with your choice of chicken noodle or vegetable, with salad and dessert for $15. Drive-through pickups are from 4 to 6. And the Colonial Beach Volunteer Rescue Squad support team will be having the Valentine's Day bake sale starting at 8 a.m. at Halls. In regard to the Planning Commission, the February meeting has been canceled and will be rescheduled for March. At that meeting, the commission's meeting will include a work session for local builders and citizens to offer input on the zoning ordinance floor area ratio regulations. This is your opportunity to offer your input, so please mark it on your calendars and participate. The community development and zoning staff is finalizing a draft of the commission's annual report to the council for the commission to consider at their March meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Larson?
All right, I'll start with the finance report. Coming up is the utility cutoffs are going to begin on the 18th of February. Those notices are in the mail. A note here, a small number of our customers have mistakenly received delinquent notices, and the staff has been working with our vendor on that, and they have confirmed, the vendor has confirmed that the error is theirs, and they're working on getting to the root cause. In the meantime, the finance team is actively working to correct those affected customer accounts. On personal property and real estate taxes, those notices were mailed in late February. Delinquent taxes are due by February the 28th. On March the 3rd, the following will be applied to delinquent accounts, DMV stops, and collection fees and administrative fees. Related to the budget, the staff is continuing their work on the fiscal 26 budget. Ms. Oaks and Ms. Tucker will provide a report on that later in the meeting. I'm also the liaison for the NGOs. That's a daunting task because I think there are 30 of them in town. I've got a report of about short sort of blur from about half of those, which I don't think I can go through in detail tonight. But I just want to recognize the fact that we have a relatively small community with a large number of citizens that are involved in these organizations trying to advance various causes in the town. I'll just kind of run through the name of a few of them here. So we have the Osprey Foundation, we have the Colonial Beach Green Space, the Community Heart and Soul, Historical Society and Museum, Chamber of Commerce, Women's Business Network, Artist Guild and CBE Creative Coming to the Table, Downtown Colonial Beach, BAM, which is the Beach Arts, Music and Mentoring, Guadalupe Free Clinic, the library, WWER radio station, and Neighbor to Neighbor. And there are more that I don't have on this list. What I'm going to do, I think, is probably spotlight a few of them in my liaison reports as we go forward. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all the details that I've received today. There are flyers up near the sign-up sheet for the public speakers with a blurb about all the NGOs that I mentioned here. Maybe like a couple of sentences of what's new going on with each one of those. So if you're interested in some of those details and you're in the room here tonight, they're right over there near the podium. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Good evening, everybody. We haven't had a meeting for the school since I became the liaison, so nothing to report tonight.
Ms. Granson?
Okay, I have not been to an economic development meeting as yet because their meeting will be in February, but I spoke with Kelly Woods Vaughn, who is the co-chair, and I asked her if there's anything she wanted me to talk about, and she provided a report for me to read with the approval of the rest of the committee. And the report begins, under Downtown Colonial Beach, commonly known as DCB, the Economic Development Committee, known as EDC, has a standard 5 designation in the Main Street framework, and key to the continued growth and development of Colonial Beach. This committee is made up of local business owners and members with extensive expertise across multi-business verticals. EDC is a key component that is pertinent to the Main Street program. The EDC meets the second Tuesday of every month from 5 to 6:30 p.m. The members are co-chairs Kelly Woods Vaughn and Benny Bowman. Committee members are Shirley Badsdar, Kathy Bachman, Doug Cooper, Jeff Crook, Lori Gore, Joe Kelly, and Michelle Merlin. Chamber of Commerce liaison is David Lipshaw. Planning Commission, Bailey Thompson, and myself as Town Council member Lisa Grandstaff. The goals going into 2025 are consistent with the goals set on tourism, which are strengthening the current season to expand it annually. New and existing businesses as follows: create, support, growth, and sustainability. Future workforce, strengthening maritime support, increased visibility to our marines and medical care. Businesses to celebrate in 2025. The Mindful Mermaid, which opened on January 18th, a new business and had their ribbon cutting. To have their soft opening February 6th and 7th. Moved into a large space and will have a soft opening February 6th. Washington Square Mobile Food Court on Washington Avenue. The Ice House Cafe, who opened in mid-January. Rios Custom Creatives on North Urban Avenue with Mario Haggerty as the owner. Pier 909 Restaurant, which will be in the Hunan space, that's in progress with an opening date to be announced soon. The reopening of Tides Inn, and last but not least, preservation of Docks Motor Court on North Urban Avenue, and the Car Repo Building on Colonial Avenue, now owned by the Tribbett family. She wanted me to also highlight the Colonial Beach High School Career Fair, which is slated for March 12th. Shirley Bazdar is coordinating this. This is a program that was started by the EDC, mirroring the program of Enrico County. This is the third career fair, and to date, it has been a success and continues to grow each year. Any businesses interested in having a table or participating are asked to contact Shirley directly by email at slbasdor@gmail.com. Their next meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 11th. End of report.
Great, thank you. Ms. Sanford?
So the February Parks and Rec Advisory Commission meeting was canceled. The next meeting will be on March 4th. The department is also working on finalizing edits on the special event application and looking to hopefully move that online and be able to pay application fees online. So hopefully it'll be an easier process for people applying for event applications. There's also a Gumbo Mardi Gras cooking class on February 25th. The cooking class is 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then there's a separate dinner that starts at 6. The cooking class is $25, and then the dinner is $10 for an adult or $5 for kids 12 and under. If you'd like to make a reservation, you can email Sally Adams by February 21st. That's all I have.
Excellent. Mr. Allison?
Good evening, everybody. So as the liaison of Public Works, I have some great news. The mixer motors that have been broken have been installed. The supplemental carbon is being fed and the nitrate and ammonia levels are coming down.
Excellent.
So that's great news. Further news about that, the ammonia that is not a new issue is also covered under our current consent order at DEQ. So there will be no additional penalties as they're being a little higher than they normally will. Other than that, previously we talked about the tours for the Public Works. If you have any questions with that, please contact the town manager to get that scheduled. Thank you.
Okay, my reports are brief tonight. I was gonna mention the career fair, but we already got that off, but I will say tomorrow, very exciting news is happening. We are accepting, the Colonial Beach Community Center and Westmoreland Little League are together accepting a grant. This is a private grant from American Water to start construction of the T-ball field at the community center. And so it's very exciting. The grant is for a total of $20,000, but the cost of the field to exceed that. So there will be fundraising efforts going that are going to be initiated with the acceptance of this grant so that we can get to full installation. And the goal being that one, possibly two, because Colonial Beach has had enough kids to fill 2 T-ball teams, will be playing in town starting this spring. And that will be the first time Colonial Beach has had T-ball back in a very long time. So very excited about that, and that announcement is coming tomorrow. So, and keep a lookout and please support the community center in this initiative if you are able to. Donations are going to be greatly appreciated to get it across the finish line, or even with labor donations. There's things like building the benches or other things that could also be very, very helpful. So, all right. Next up is presentations. Sometimes I have a tendency to skip forward in the agenda, as my counsel knows me for this, so I was just sort of making sure. No, we do the Pledge of Allegiance at the regular meetings, although I do pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. No, I'm very happy to. Okay, next up is the proclamation for honoring Black History Month. I'll read the proclamation. Whereas Black History Month is an annual celebration of the achievements and contributions made by African Americans throughout the history of the United States, acknowledging the central role of Black individuals in shaping the history, culture, and society of this nation. And whereas the history and heritage of African Americans are integral to the ongoing fight for justice, equality, and civil rights, and whereas the town of Colonial Beach recognizes the importance of learning from the past, celebrating the achievements of the present, and ensuring that the future continues to honor the contributions of African Americans in all fields, including politics, arts, science, education, business, and beyond. And whereas this observance offers an opportunity to reflect on the struggles of the past, recognizes the victories of the present, and dedicate ourselves to ensuring the continued advancement of social equity, opportunity, and dignity for all individuals regardless of race or background. Now therefore, that the Town Council on behalf of the Town of Colonial Beach do hereby proclaim the month of February as Black History Month in the town. We encourage all residents to observe this month with respect, learning, and reflection on the profound impact of African Americans in our community, nation, and the world. And I just with that want to highlight that our school board office is going to be dedicated to our very first African American mayor here in town. And I don't know when the dedication ceremony is, but keep a lookout for that. Mr. Williams is that couples well. And there was a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration that was postponed because of the weather that came in. That has been rescheduled. It is now February 23rd, 2025 at 3 p.m. at Colonial Beach Baptist Church, which is at 10 Garfield Avenue. Next up, we welcome Mr. David Beal with the Virginia Department of Transportation.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Ms. Tucker asked that I come talk to you about sidewalks, and I see I'm under the presentation component, but I envision this in my mind more like a dialogue. If you all have questions, she gave me some kind of canned questions to answer. If you have questions as I go along, I'm happy for you to interrupt me as you see fit. First question she asked me to answer was, how do we determine who is responsible for specific sidewalks? And that starts with who owns the property. Does the town own the property? Is it public? Is it VDOT? Is it town? Is it private? Who's the owner? And then after you figure out, and the only way to do that is to look at the plats in the courthouse. You're not going to know that by walking down the street. If the sidewalk serves a private entity, it could be installed by permit, but we would have allowed to be installed by permit. And that permit may require that the owner maintain that sidewalk. So if the sidewalk starts in a public place, it connects to a road, but then it goes on to private property, even the portion of that sidewalk will be on public property, may be within the right of way, that responsibility for maintenance may still fall on the property owner who that sidewalk serves. So there's not each case is case specific, but it starts at the courthouse with knowing whose property is what and where the right of way lies. The next question was, what are the limits when a small section could be repaired versus the entire street? And that just comes down to the scope of your project and your budget. You may have noticed on 205 and Route 205Y, Colonial Avenue, a couple years ago, we did a project. It was just a grinding project that eliminated trip hazards. So you can see where the panels joined together. If one was a little higher, we had a company come in and grind it off to make a smoother transition. Fairly low cost project to solve a problem without having major construction, tearing up sidewalks and relaying concrete. But it just depends on how big your problem is. That same company did an inventory for us across the entire residency, which is 5 counties. And some places they could help us, and some places they identified areas where, hey, this is a remove and replace. We can't help you. You need to tear this out and relay it. Non-standard sidewalks. The question was how do we handle 30-inch to 47-inch sidewalks? So 48-inch sidewalk is the minimum that's required. If you have a 48-inch sidewalk, you're supposed to have 60-inch passing zones every so often. But most of the sidewalks we install with new projects now are just 60 inches. But where you have non-standard sidewalks, I would say that your obligation is to maintain them. And where you have a new project, you build a sidewalk that meets the current standards. But if you have a 30-inch sidewalk, you need to maintain it as a 30-inch sidewalk. How do we handle poles in the middle of sidewalks? They're just handled as an existing condition. If a project comes along that's going to upgrade that stretch of sidewalk, then we would obviously resolve that conflict, either move the utility pole or move the sidewalk. But obviously, a pole in the middle of the sidewalk is not passable, especially if you were in a wheelchair. Crosswalks, crosswalk requirements, do they need to be painted or not painted? Do they need to be in place at all? What signage is required? We have a guidance document that handles most every situation at unsignalized intersections. I'm happy to share that with town staff. We did add a crosswalk on 205, I believe it was last year, and we made some recommendations on Washington Avenue for, I think, 2 more as a courtesy to the town. We have a guidance document, each situation, how many people are crossing, how many vehicles go up and down the road, what's the configuration of the road, all those things come into play. So there's no hard and fast answer as to when they're required. You just have to look at each case. ADA requirements for existing sidewalks versus new. Obviously, any new sidewalk is going to meet current standards. That would be your goal. For us, handicap ramps, we typically upgrade the handicap ramps when we pave that road. So paving cycle, give or take, every 10 years. When we resurface the road, we also do an inventory of the handicap ramps, and we will tear them out and replace them with that paving effort. What are VDOT responsibilities versus town responsibilities? So you all are the only town in the Northern Neck residency that maintains their own roads. I believe it's 3,500. When the population goes over 3,500, the code requires the towns to take over the maintenance. VDOT still maintains the primary routes, which are 205 and 205Y, but all the secondary routes are you all's. How do other communities prioritize and address repairs? It's really just a community decision based on the needs and the budget. Everybody's needs are bigger than their budget. I think that's fair to say. So it just comes to priority. And for me, I think it's just, we look at what sidewalks get the most usage. We have a lot of older kind of legacy sidewalks in some of the smaller towns that nobody uses. And we don't prioritize maintenance on those. Although we have moved recently to replace some of them. But in the more populated towns, we do concrete repairs and sidewalks every year. Next question was about liabilities of town. The liabilities of town if someone gets hurt on a sidewalk that you knew to be an issue. And as a good engineer, I'll defer that to an attorney. But I would say you should consider removing hazards if you can't fix them. So if you can't take care of the hazard, I'd consider closing the sidewalk or just removing the sidewalk altogether. How long do you let a kid play on an unsafe play set? Kind of same example. But I would defer that to the town attorney regarding liabilities. But that's everything that Ms. Tucker has sent to me. If you want to have any questions, I'm happy to try to take those.
I saw Mr. Wood's hand up first. So.
Do you recall roughly how many spots that you recommended that we put crosswalks here in town?
Oh, we were only asked to look at 3.
Okay. Do you recall where they were?
They're both on Washington. Is it Avenue? Washington Avenue.
Okay.
I can send a report. We have a written.
Yeah, I have the map up on my laptop. One was at Colonial, which y'all did because it's on 205Y.
Right.
And then the other 2, one was at the intersection of Wilder, and the other one was at looks to me like River Gym and Willie's.
Thanks.
Ms. Williams?
Just a few questions. One of the questions I had last year was when they were talking about crosswalks was Castlewood Park. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that down there, but traffic comes in from like 7 different directions, east and west or north and south on Irving, and then several other streets and a couple streets ago down into Dockside. And so I was questioning last year because a lot of traffic, especially beachgoers, going from the bathrooms or to the parking lot, and we got boat launch that launch into the boat launch there. So it's a ton of traffic. So my concern is that, pedestrians getting hit down there, especially on busy holidays. So I questioned about possibly getting crosswalks down there, and then I was later told because there's no sidewalks, we can't have. Is that the case? If you don't have sidewalks, you can't put crosswalks in?
Well, we typically put crosswalks between sidewalks. But that didn't necessarily keep you from, if you have a dirt path, you got pedestrians, evidence of pedestrians using that area. I think in the end, and we could look back at that guidance document, it just comes back to, it's what we would call engineering judgment. If you feel like signs are necessary to notify motorists of the potential for people crossing there. And the other question you might want to ask yourself is, why aren't there sidewalks there? If people are crossing there and there's a dirt path, maybe that's somewhere that we need to prioritize to install some pedestrian improvements with the crosswalk.
Is that something that would it be like an assessment? Like, would VDOT help with anything like that, or is that strictly on the town?
I think we'd be happy to help you, as a review. When the town took over maintenance of their streets, all the engineering and construction and everything that goes with that is a responsibility of the town. But VDOT, obviously, we have expertise and we're happy to help where we can. But we would do that on a courtesy basis.
Okay. And one of the questions I did have, he's pretty much answered, was what the town's responsibility is for sidewalks. We have, I guess 8 locations or something like that were under that 88 violation that we got last year. There's a lot of sidewalks in town that don't go anywhere. Some terrible shape, and I've heard different suggestions, like we should tear them out, or we should start looking. Do you have any advice for the town, going forward, because we don't want to continue to get 88 violations or people complaining? Any suggestions on how we can be more proactive to mitigate the hazards in town, because there's plenty of them?
Yeah, do you have a pedestrian safety action plan or anything as part of your comp plan? That would be where I would start, is take inventory of everything that you have and then figure out where you want to be and what it takes to get there. And, put that in as part of your comp plan. You can prioritize projects, whether it's installing segments of sidewalk or, you may going to get developed, let's tear the sidewalk out. There's no reason for anybody to walk there. But I think that's where I would start. We just reviewed a plan for the Dahlgren area. Town of Bowling Green, I know they were awarded a smart scale project a couple of years ago that part of it, there was a road improvement and there was a commuter lot, but then the other part of that was connecting up a lot of these sidewalks in town that, didn't connect. So I know there are opportunities, I think, and I can work with Ms. Tucker to try to help you find an avenue for that pedestrian safety action plan. That was something that GWRC pulled together. But the Northern Neck PDC, maybe that would help with that. But I can work with Ms. Tucker on that and see if we can find a way to help you come up with a plan.
Okay. I did have a constituent ask me about, I know this isn't sidewalks, but paving standards, when the town's in charge of their own roads, but they're still required to meet VDOT standards, right? And you guys inspect those? Because there's been questions like, are we following, are we not? And I'm assuming we are, but is there any kind of checks and balances in there? Like, once we pave our own roads, do you all come and inspect, make sure they're the right depth? And
So the town is part of what we call the urban program, and your funding is based on the mileage of roads. Because all of your roads are local roads, what we would deem as local roads based on the functional classification, VDOT does not require me to come inspect. So there are no inspections that happen. That being said, for a road to come into the system, if a developer built new roads and you wanted them to be counted in that inventory so that you could get your maintenance funding, we would come do an inspection at that time to make sure that road met current standards.
Okay, appreciate that. And then one last question from a constituent. They were questioning, and this might not even be under your umbrella, but they were questioning, there's a lot of no parking signs in town that are basically bootleg. People, put out themselves to, keep people from parking in front of their houses and stuff like that. I guess they wanted to know, is that something that falls under VDOT, or is that just a town ordinance thing?
I would assume that's a town ordinance. I mean, it's illegal to post a no trespassing sign, I believe, if you don't own that property. I don't know about a no parking sign. But we have all kinds of signs within the right of way that are illegally posted, from yard sales to politicians to realtors to everything else in between. And we routinely collect them up and, get rid of them. So if you found that a sign was illegal, maybe public or illegally posted, maybe that's something you could task Public Works with, is just collect them and get rid of them.
Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I have one question for you. It's general, but it's specific to location. What happened if a sidewalk, a crosswalk was initially put in years ago when the need was there, but the volume has changed and where the location of the sidewalk is no longer benefits, it needs to be moved? Do you get involved in coming out to assess that there is a valid reason now to move the sidewalk where there's more traffic and pedestrian crossing than where it was originally placed years ago?
Yeah, I would get involved if that was on 205 or 205Y.
Okay,
But if it was within the secondary streets of the town, that would be an internal decision for whoever's managing those streets. We did have recently, just jog on memory, on Leedstown Road, there's a church and they've got some property.
Oak Grove.
Okay, is that what you're asking me about?
Yes, that was the general question, but it has come up in other things. So while I had you here, I wanted to ask you, since Mr. Smith, Antoine asked on my behalf, because it has changed, so.
Yeah, I can get your contact and
Okay.
circle back with you, but we've got a plan for that. We're getting ready to resurface it. We have a drawing and we're gonna move it.
Thank you. So just in case it came again, I was curious, so thank you.
I have a couple. I turned my mic off. I have a couple questions. One of the things that came up at the last BML I was at was access to federal funds for safe streets and roads, and that in order to access those, we need a safety action plan. Is there a VDOT or regional safety action plan that the town could fall under? Or do we need to develop our own?
I think you need to develop your own. So I think you're referring to what they call SS4A, Safe Streets for All. The first step of that is developing a safety action plan, and there's funding available to develop the plan. And then after you develop the plan, you apply for projects that are within the plan. We went through that. GWRC did a plan for Caroline County and King George County. So I was a part of the one in King George. But again, I think, you all could take it on yourself, or maybe that's something that the PDC could help you with.
Yeah, I'm sure the PDC would be helpful in that. I just didn't know if there was a regional plan already in place, because some of the localities do fall within these other plans, and then they don't have to write, another one, they can kind of go more faster to implementation, so.
There are none in the Northern Neck that I'm aware of other than the one that we did in King George.
Right. The next question is about safe routes to schools. Obviously, we did a safe routes to schools. Our school burned down. We have a new school. It's in a different location. Is that eligible for a new round of safe routes to schools?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, do you have a project in mind?
I think there's been a request by the school system, particularly for First Street and then possibly like Dwight.
And those are sidewalks, pedestrian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I can find out.
And is the town or the school the applicant?
I think the town.
Right. Okay. And, so there's a mileage that happens with our local road system, and that's how we get funded with the maintenance funds, from the state, since we maintain our own roads. But since we maintain our own sidewalks, is there a mileage on sidewalks to get funding?
No.
And they expect us to also maintain sidewalks without receiving any funding dedicated
Yes.
to them?
Yeah, it's ancillary to the road.
You want to say that louder?
There's no extra funding.
Thank
It's
you.
all included.
Yeah, so communities like ours that are older in age and have aged sidewalks, aren't given any assistance with our road maintenance funds.
Not with maintenance. There is funding available that you could apply for through transportation alternatives, which is like sidewalks and shared use paths. And we've had some of those conversations about different projects. They require local match. Transportation alternatives is 20% match. And then, of course, you'll have a revenue sharing project, which is a 50% match. But pedestrian projects would be eligible for revenue sharing as well. But that's new construction, it's not maintenance.
Right, so all these existing sidewalks that we have in town are not eligible for the pedestrian side of it.
Not routine maintenance. I'll double check. But if you had a street full of 30-inch sidewalks with utility poles in them that were essentially non-functional, you may be able to do a project that resolves all those conflicts and puts in standard, sidewalks that would meet ADA requirements. So it goes beyond, just because it's new construction, it's beyond just routine maintenance. But I don't know of any funding that would come out and remove trip hazards for you on existing sidewalks. But I think some of those programs could be used to remove and replace non-standard sidewalk and put in, new sidewalk.
I think part of our challenge is that if you picked a section of it, then the section that connects to it would also be non-compliant and so on and
Probably
so
have to go
forth.
block to block,
Right.
from ramp to ramp.
And the last question I had for you was, cleaning on 205, the side of the road between here and Hall Supermarket, about once a quarter comes up at the Westmoreland County Board of Supervisors board meeting, and the trash along the roadway is pretty significant. And, again, I think the county did a really great cleanup last year, but I didn't know if you or VDOT had any plans for doing a cleanup on 205. It's a pretty dangerous area for us to stick volunteers out by. I didn't know.
Okay, we plan to pick up litter, we budget to pick up litter when we mow. So this time of year, it's tough because we don't do a litter pickup in the middle of the winter. And that's when the grass is the lowest and it looks the worst. But we mow primary routes 3 times a year, and as long as our budget allows, we pick up trash 3 times a year with each mow. And that's typically between May and late October.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. Does anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Beal? Okay,
All right, thank you all.
thank you very much, appreciate it. All right, next up is Downtown Columbia Beach and the Timmons Group, a presentation on the SMART grant. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So this is my first opportunity to speak before you about the Main Street program here in Colonial Beach. And since the governor designated downtown Colonial Beach as a full Main Street program. So I just wanted to let you know how proud we are of that accomplishment and how happy we were to have worked with the town on getting all of the ducks in a row that we needed to make that happen, and how much we look forward to working with the town in the future to make sure that we can implement all the wonderful things that we plan to implement. I also do want to mention that there is a fundraiser for downtown Colonial Beach. It's our second annual Mardi Gras fundraiser, which is on March 1st. If you need any information, you can check out the Downtown Colonial Beach Facebook page. But we're here this evening to hear from the Timmons Group about the grant that we received last year. It was a grant for $60,000 that Virginia Main Street had encouraged downtown Colonial Beach to apply for, and we did apply for it, and we did receive it. And we went through a competitive process to select the contracting firm to do it, and we were very pleased to have a very good response from the Timmons Group, and I'm going to let them take over and explain what it is that they're going to be doing for us.
I appreciate that. My name is Thomas Ruff with the Timmons Group, and I've got my colleague Steve Schmidt, both transportation engineers as well as planners. I just realized there's no clicker here, so I guess I'm going to look at you and you got. But if you want to go ahead and jump in to where we're going here, we've got this planning grant. It's from the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, for communities that are designated as a Virginia Main Street community. So getting that designation opened the door to a funding source that allows for looking at kind of a number of different things. And I'm sure all of you had read through. There's a lot of technical information that DHCD is looking for, but these are the main topics and the main things of trying to grow. And so working with DCB, they'll be kind of leading this process with us, guiding through there. We've got a number of different tasks that we're going to touch on. If you want to step into that next slide. So I think that was, Mr. Beals stepped out already, but I thought that was a great lead in to this conversation. Part of the first task of this is to review the portion of the study area for connectivity. And, it's multimodal. It's not just driving into town. It is looking at walking and biking and the use of the trolley throughout the Colonial and Washington Avenue corridors. And how we can work to bring, increase tourism, increase kind of the economic development and how the town is seen. And so there's a number of different items in that, wayfinding, a couple different things. So some of the topics, and we can certainly get to that on the question side, but some of the topics you all just spoke about crosswalks and sidewalks and things like that, we can certainly get into as we dive into some of the funding opportunities at the end of this grant. The next one. There was we were provided with from the town and DCB a market study that was recently completed, and we're going to be taking that to help look at any gaps in some of the parcels along the corridors, as well as just how we can bring in some of the connectivity for Colonial and Washington, getting folks into downtown and kind of growing the businesses that you have along those corridors. There is a public engagement component that is a part of the grant. And certainly there'll be a stakeholder team. We're working with the DCB folks to kind of organize that initial stakeholder group, and then certainly get out into the public, kind of begin to share that information, try to get feedback from the public as we build out this plan for the future. There is, there's a lot of visioning that'll be happening with this. So we have up there implementation matrix for the corridors. Certainly that's something I'm hearing quite a bit in your questions, is that kind of thinking through how you can take a plan. We don't like to work on plans where you guys you hear us say, here are all your problems, and walk away. We would like to help match up the ability, some of those recommendations or some of those needs that we're getting from the community. Where are the funding sources that can support that? So certainly, May just mentioned, Safe Streets for All. Certainly that's a great program, but there are a number of different programs that work for sidewalks and safety and those elements that could benefit the town in a lot of different ways to try to meet some of the goals you have for connectivity. I'm going to let my colleague here, Steve, wrap up a little bit of what we've done so far.
Yeah, thank you for having us out tonight. Just real quickly, the general study area, right, is all of Colonial Avenue from the Y there and then all the way down to the beach. We're gonna come down Washington and then really to the beach as well. And also there's a part of this that is what to do with Town Hill, what to do with that section of the study area as well. Go ahead, please. So this is kind of the overall schedule. We're starting with reviewing existing conditions and site assessment. You saw some of those pictures. We had our team was out here walking the area, talking to people. They had a great conversation with you, Mayor, as well. And they were out there during the snow, which was fun too. So some of those pictures have a lot of snow in there as well. We're at the very beginning of this process. We're going to take what we learn and we're going to step through this with DCB, with the stakeholders, with the public, to finally get to that end, that vision plan of development and then the funding arm and recommendations for that as well. Go ahead, please. So really, yeah, we just wanted to come and introduce the project, introduce the study where we are. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And we're really looking forward to working with DCB and the town and the citizens as well throughout this process.
Do you have any examples of where you've done a SMART grant in other communities?
Sure. So we've worked with the Virginia Main Street Communities Program for most of the program's lifespan. From a specifics, we're working right now on one with the town of Buena Vista. We've done some other work with, I don't want to just list off, but we do have quite a few that we have worked throughout the years. That's kind of one of our, we are a local government kind of consulting firm, so we do Virginia local governments.
Yeah, I just like to go to their websites and check them out or go
Oh,
to
sure.
their-
Sure, I can send you some examples, maybe, to send away.
I want to make sure there are other questions for the SMART grant. Yes?
What's the timeline look like for this?
Sure, so the total funding in the grant program was to be completed by the end of this year. So that's kind of the long range. We need to complete the funding program by that point. But we're working with DCB on setting up kind of the rounds of stakeholder engagement with a goal of trying to be done before that timeline. So kind of the timeline for. So try to do some of the community engagement before we get to the summer, or maybe there's a lot of things going on. Try to, again, one of the elements in talking with DCB folks is preservation and getting what the community wants. And so hearing from the community first and trying to do that right in the busy season down this year. And that makes some of the community engagement a little different during the summer months than it is in spring.
Do you have a follow-up? Okay, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, just kind of wonder what, sorry if I missed it earlier, but what's the end game? Like, are you going to give us advice on how we should kind of reorganize things and like signage and sidewalks and different things, or what exactly is the end game?
Sure. So we kind of covered a number of different topics, but yes, so there'll be recommendations for sidewalk, improvements, connectivity along those two corridors. You all mentioned a number of things throughout town, but it is focused in those areas. But there will be recommendations for sidewalks, the crosswalks, wayfinding signage, parking, as Steve mentioned, the Town Hill area, and just trying to make sure there's connectivity between. We've heard a lot of just as you're entering, making sure we're sending people that are new to the town to the right places. Making sure they find their way to what the town wants them to be going to. So yeah.
And do you work with the businesses too to kind of get their feedback as far as their,
That is correct. And this program is being managed by the DCB staff. So it is going to be, pulling directly from that. Obviously, the town is a partner with this, but DCB is managing this and will be helping to bring as many businesses in. You won't say it specifically, but certainly.
Thank you.
Mr. Wood?
Did you guys work with Front Royal, Virginia by any chance?
I did not personally, but I can double check that. I will say we have a long list of these programs over the years, so I can double check for you specifically.
If you would, because I do believe they were part of the Main Street program, and it was absolutely transformative. So if you could find that, I would certainly appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah, we've done, I think, work for about 70 of the Main Street communities in the state. But I can't say personally, I've done.
Understood. Thank you.
Is the product from this aligned with something like the DHCD block grant?
So this is aligned in which way? I guess this is part of the DHCD's community development arm, but it is focused on Virginia Main Streets. It's the Virginia Main Street program.
Yeah, I say that because we got a block grant that originally focused on the boardwalk area, and it didn't go up Colonial Avenue the way this does. But then that helped with, we got sidewalk improvements, lighting improvements, signage, things like that. That was a little over 10 years ago. But it's, with the designation of Main Street, which we're very excited about, it seems like an opportunity to go for a second round in that, to expand on the things that happened then. And so I was just seeing if they were tied together or not.
So there is there are secondary programs that once you have this in place, that DHCD allows you to apply for. So there is the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, that may be
That's what I'm talking about.
what it was the previous time. And yeah, you could apply for that every year if you chose, but this gives you that extra level of credibility with DHCD that you're not just applying for one-off items. You're saying, hey, we're checking off items that were in our plan. That's why they push for this program for Main Street communities to kind of target where you and work through how much the costs are instead of kind of coming in with one-off programs.
Okay. Are there any other questions? No? Thank you very much for coming. We look forward to hearing back from you again in October,
Hopefully.
August.
But yes, yeah.
July,
Later this year. Later this year.
tomorrow.
Yeah. We'll come back by the end of the.
Okay. All right, make sure you get clerk a heads up on timeline so that we can forecast in and look forward to an update.
Sure, and we'll work with the DCD folks on.
Yes. Yeah.
And we will have a project website going up and kind of that will start also to help to kind of put all that information together. And then we'll make sure the schedule and all the elements are part of that as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just one.
Okay. Next up on the agenda is public comment. Just remind people that during public comment, we ask for a few guidelines to be followed. Please stand at the podium, and for the record, please state your name and address. If you'd like to be contacted, provide your contact information on the sheet for the clerk or afterwards for the clerk. Make sure your comments are to the council as a whole. Be brief, state your position, provide facts. You do have 5 minutes. And you can provide written statements or supporting materials to the clerk for distribution to the council or manager, and she keeps those on file as well, anything that's written. We don't debate during public comment. This is time for us to listen, and we will follow up on any comments provided by the town manager. Speak clearly because we want to hear what you have to say. So if you're coming up for public comment, I welcome now. We'll start public comment and
We only have one sign up, Mr. Barry Billward.
welcome Mr. Miller.
Barry Millwood, 405 Livingstone Street. Madam Mayor, council members, residents, thanks for giving me the time. Some years ago, the town of Colonial Beach adopted an ordinance to make the town a bird sanctuary. And that just expanded on federal protections that there are for birds. This has really been a passive thing, except for a couple of instances. The couple of instances I refer to are the ospreys and the bald eagles. And anybody who's been around here for a long time knows that back 20 or 30 years ago, both of those birds were in danger of becoming extinct. As they started to recover, people put up nest platforms and our osprey population came back. Certain residents of the town and the environs have gone to extraordinary lengths to take eagles that are suffering from lead shot poisoning to rehab us and restore the eagles here as well. But it's not just those birds that have had problems that we created for them. The songbirds do too, and nobody noticed that quite so much. They've had massive declines as a result of human activity. The cavity nesters like the bluebirds, tree swallows, chickadees, wrens, some of the warblers, their houses have gone away as we cut down trees. Not only that, we've introduced the English house sparrow, and you know those English, and the European starling, and they compete for those few nest cavities that are still available. So the poor little bluebirds and chickadees and titmice and things don't get to live here anymore. In many communities, this decline has been offset and is being offset by the introduction of what they call bluebird trails. And in this thing, volunteers put up bluebird nest boxes in a trail so that somebody can go and check on those nest boxes. It's very easy. You just drive down the road and they're by the side of the road or whatever. And check on them and actually throw out the English house sparrows that are taking over the nest, because they will kill the chicks of other birds. So what you do is you set up these nest boxes, and if you've been down to Stratford Hall, there's a major nest trail there, probably about 50 nest boxes. They just put up a trail with the tribe down in the Bones Cliffs area. And I'd like to put one in here, because I just think it would be neat to have those birds back again. We call it a bluebird nest trail, but we don't care if they're bluebirds or tree swallows or chickadees. They all nest in the same place. And I think I've discovered the perfect location to put one of these in the town of Colonial Beach. And that would be the side of the road, either side of the road, leading from 205 to the wastewater treatment plant. Low traffic, ideal habitat, trees but not wooded, grass that is kept down, maintained. These birds would love to be there. It's a great spot for them. No cost, but I need to get permission to start a project like this. And if it's not there, we can think about other places. But I just want to start that conversation. I'll be talking to the town about it. And I would like feedback, positive or negative, from the town, from Public Works, because it would be on their watch. If anybody has any comments, you can call me, 540-642-3768. Or no point trying to get me on social media, but you can get Joni on social media. And she'll pass the message along. So anyone interested in assisting, sponsoring the nest, monitoring nests, any of that, you know where and how to find me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Anybody else? Come on up. Welcome.
My name is Harry Yathy. I live at 115 Lossing Avenue. My house is one of them on the sidewalk list. And unfortunately, the gentleman left. My questions really was for him. I've walked around the town quite a bit, observing other people's sidewalks as well as my own. And the observation I wanted to share was a lot of the damage seems to be where the water pipes come in, where the water meters are. So like at my house, the worst part of my sidewalk that's out of compliance has dropped about 1.5 feet, right where that water comes into my house. So if you follow the suggestion that the homeowner is going to be responsible for repair, how would I manage something like that where the water main comes in? So it's just something I wanted to throw out as an observation and something to add to your thoughts as you're deciding how to handle sidewalks.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You bet.
Anyone else? Welcome.
My name is Josh Magner, live at 300 Lafayette. This is also to do with the sidewalks and stuff. Y'all recently smoke tested sewers in front of the house, and there was white flags put up everywhere where the sewers were leaking and failing. There's a water meter box in my sidewalk that's 4 inches above the top of the sidewalk. I've been waiting for months for a kid to hit it, wreck, TKO. But what bothered me was about a week after y'all tested the sewer, you came in and paved Lafayette, brand new asphalt. And why? You knew the sewer had failed the test and was leaking. You know there's problems with the sidewalk failing. Why would you spend the people's money and put new asphalt down? It's really putting the cart before the horse. I don't know, y'all don't know me or really know my background, but I've managed multi-million-dollar a day dredging and beach renourishment projects. My father owned an excavating company in Northern Virginia. I have been around this stuff my whole life, and to come in and pave, that's the last thing you do. That's finished product. You don't do that if you have sewers failing, water meter boxes that aren't working. And now, another thing is, the guy from VDOT said that y'all are going to have to put 60-inch sidewalks back in. A lot of these roads aren't going to allow for a 60-inch sidewalk to get put back in without removing the water ditch, for runoff and stuff. So now we're going to run into a whole nother issue. And I mean, this is just going to be a bag of worms that is going to explode if y'all don't get a grip on it. And it seems like to me, there must be a problem with who's running public works, because he's in charge of saying, go pave this, go fix that. And for him to spend the money to pave it before it's fixed, maybe y'all need to sit down and talk to him and ask him why the money is being spent. But it's definitely a concern. And he nicely told y'all that y'all are responsible if somebody gets hurt in a roundabout nice way. A kid come down through there and get hurt, or an elderly person come down through there and fall, then what? Then what are we going to do? I really hope that y'all focus very seriously on this. And like I said, I live at 300 Lafayette. Y'all are more than welcome to come by and talk to me anytime. Any kind of knowledge or anything I can share with anyone, I would love to help in any way. I grew up in Westmoreland County. I'm not from Colonial Beach, but I grew up in Coles Point. I went to Westmoreland County High School. I'm a waterman, grew up working on the water. I hold this area near and dear to my heart. I would really like to help y'all. So please, don't be scared to come and ask if y'all need some help.
Will you leave your contact information with the town clerk, please?
Yes.
Yeah, your name, email, and phone number.
Yeah, not a problem at all. And like I said, I'd like to help y'all. It just seems like there's some problems and the progression that y'all are doing with the projects. I think maybe need to back up and punt on paving stuff until you get the other underlying problems fixed first.
Thank you.
So thank y'all.
Anyone else? All right, I'm gonna close public comment. We got new business. FY 20, sorry, Heather, I didn't mean, are you ready? Budget?
It's okay. we did receive an email from Will Knuckles, and that will be available in the minutes or by request. So just to let everybody know.
Heather, is that not part of, because it's received after 3 or something? Normally you read that.
No, I was directed not to read emails. Because it's just,
Is that a new policy or just tonight or what?
Back,
Yes,
back to meeting policy,
what's that?
like a back to office policy, a back to meeting policy.
yeah, because that was only in place and allowed because of COVID in the past. Before COVID, we didn't read email comments. So, yeah.
Who made executives? I mean, I like hearing the comments, I'm just curious as
Can you
to.
speak into the mic though?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking why we no longer read public comments, and we were told because of back to work or something like that, but COVID's been over for like 3 years, and now we're not reading public comments, so I just thought that might be a good segue to a conversation if we're gonna stop doing that.
I can tell you that we're the only locality that reads verbatim comments. I've talked to plenty of other clerks, and nobody reads public comments verbatim. They just say that the name and the name of the person who made a comment, and that it will be available within the minutes and upon request.
Okay. I'll see about, maybe put it on agenda or discussion later. Thank you.
So,
Okay,
bit of a conversation about it, not to go deep into this, but, reviewing a lot of the other jurisdictions and counties and cities and stuff, a lot of them don't do verbatim conversations. What they do is they mention who provided the comment, and they initialize that it will be in minutes, part of the package, that is being distributed. So, I mean, we've had, portions where we've had, 20, 30, I mean, you were here, you helped read a lot of those that we've had in the past. At 5 minutes apiece, that could be hours that we use public comment, where we could be doing other items on here. Not saying that public comment's not important, but we allow the individuals that are in the room to speak their 5 minutes. And if people want to provide their written comments, I think it would be beneficial to us as a town and also as a group. So that way the people that are here aren't sitting here for an hour listening to us just reading the comments over and over again. So that's just my feedback on that. I think it's, if someone wanted to be here to give a public comment, they would come here and they could give that to us. If they can't, we can put it in part of the package once we get done. So that's just my personal opinion. And if anybody else has anything to say, they surely can.
I'll just request this gets put on the agenda because I'm not even sure this is appropriate conversation for right now, but I'll just ask we put it on a future meeting so we can.
Okay. We're gonna move forward to the 2026 budget update. Ms. Natasha Tucker.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. So what the finance director and I will discuss tonight is just a high-level overview of the fiscal 26 budget process and update. We'll tell you what we have done so far, where we are now, and the next steps for moving forward. And so I'll let Lisa go ahead and start with what we've done in developing the budget and trying to just align everything that we have reviewed with department heads with our strategic action plan.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first slide here is just a little discussion on developing the budget. It's a forward-looking document that we use to plan for the next fiscal year. It provides guidance to management and staff to achieve the goals and objectives that the council has set in the strategic action plan. Between the town manager's office and the finance department, we collaborate with each department And then the council provides input and guidance throughout the process. In the council meetings and work sessions, both residents and town council have several opportunities to review the budget before it's adopted by council. Town manager's office and the finance department develop the budget, incorporated town council's input, guidance, and then they submit the final budget to the town council for formal adoption. Next slide. Key considerations when we're developing the budget are fiscal responsibility, the needs of our community, the long-term financial sustainability of the town, and the alignment with our strategic objectives. This year, I've highlighted a few impacts for the budget. Always impacts our budget. There is escalating cost of goods, including our employees, that affects our salaries and benefits. Rising expenses force us to make difficult decisions. Those could result in us having to reduce or increase taxes. Revenue challenges. We've talked about this before. Davenport has been here, and expenditures are exceeding where that gap is growing. So we need to really look at ways to and be able to sustain our budget. Last one is school funding. I know that the RLM, our required local, has increased significantly, especially the last 2 years. I think it was 500,000 one year, 600,000 last year. I don't even know where it's going, especially with the recent federal mandates of cutting federal funding. So that is another big impact and something that we're looking at as we are. So all of our department heads submitted the budgets to the town manager and the finance director. They've detailed the requirements and align those with strategic priorities. Our outside agencies that we contribute to. We have developed a preliminary revenue forecast that we are going to be refining through this process. And we have conducted individual budget review meetings with our department heads to start evaluating their requests. And we have also provided guidance to our department heads, asking for some supplemental documentation on some of the items, so we can have that more transparency to you guys, what these actual expenditures are for and the backup to support them. Next slide. There are some items that we do not have yet to make good estimates to put in the budget. We're waiting on our general liability insurance quote. We just got the renewal package from them. We are also waiting on our healthcare renewal. There's been a delay. Our current TLC, the local choice where we get our healthcare from, has been in negotiations with Anthem. So they're still trying to decide whether or not Anthem is going to be one of their providers of healthcare. So we're hoping to get those quotes by March 3rd. And we're still waiting again for the school's RLM, and that is again supposed to be coming out in March. So our next steps, we're going to continue evaluating the department requests as they provide that supplemental information. We're going to align those proposals with our strategic goals and our financial constraints. We are going to be, like I said, looking into current revenue streams and potential other avenues. We are going to be arranging those 202 discussions with the council to have in-depth conversations, go line by line on the budget and get feedback. Let's see. And then once we have that, then we will be able to take those adjustments and progress toward working to balance the budget. And the last part, we're going to maintain those ongoing discussions with council members to ensure that we come to a budget we can all work with next year. Does anybody have any questions?
Comment that you may have found interesting, there are areas, refresh our memory on those spots where our intake is not keeping up with our outflow.
The last few years, we've really seen, really since COVID really did a number on inflation. Everybody knows that from their books. The cost of goods that we need to provide the services have risen at a higher percentage than we are collecting revenue. We have a shortfall. We've been okay the last few years, still being able to, through the year, cut back on those expenditures. So we are seeing an increase in our bottom line at the end of the year. So we did increase the last 2 years. We have increased our fund balance. But we have to make sure that that revenue is going to start coming up to match, to close that gap. We try throughout the year, but if we get hit with some kind of emergency where we have to make a lot of adjustments or spend a lot of time on overtime, those things can blow our budget very quickly. Very diligent in trying to cut expenses where possible. That has allowed us to keep growing our fund balance. But this is not a way to sustain your financial stability, to sustain the financial stability of the town. We have to start looking forward and making sure that we are closing that gap instead of that gap getting bigger every year. That's what I'm talking about.
So what I'm a little unclear of is that we're growing our fund balance, but we're slipping further behind. It sounds counterintuitive, right?
The gap between each fiscal year, the expenditures we 4% difference grows than our revenue grew. And it's gonna get bigger. I think the original thing with Davenport had given before, we're getting a bigger gap. It's more like 6 or 7%. So we really have to start looking at bridging that gap to keep them more in line.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, question, for the health court. You said that you're still waiting for them to, and you should have it by March. When is usually open enrollment, like for staff insurance and stuff like that?
Open enrollment is, last year they cut it to 2 weeks. It's April 1st or April 15th. So there is a possibility they will push open enrollment back because they haven't gotten our quotes. But we are already looking at other avenues too. So we're not just looking at business as usual at TLC. We're looking at other opportunities that might be able to help us lower those healthcare costs.
Okay, so in the meantime, staff or whoever takes the insurance still have those benefits roll over until you get the new quotes?
We will have them before the open enrollment. We'll have a decision made. We've already talked to one other company that is getting us a proposal. So we'll have something to compare their rates with what TLC is, and it's a possibility that we could be switching who's brokering our insurance.
Okay, so yours runs from April to April, so the coverage is still.
Well,
in place
the
until-
coverage runs July to June,
Okay,
but open enrollment is in April.
okay. So they still have the coverage. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Williams?
Are you guys planning on trash enterprise fund in this year's budget?
We really need to examine that more closely regarding the turning it into an enterprise fund. When I looked at the preliminary numbers from last year, after we only had 1 year last year, the revenue that was generated will not be enough to cover the cost of maintaining and replacing the trash truck in the long term. We would have to raise those rates for our garbage service. And not only that, the plan to pay back the ARPA funds. It's something that has to be analyzed a little bit more. Just looking at those preliminary numbers from the first year. Unless we want to talk about raising the price of garbage, I think we just can leave it now until we can make some better decisions. Because right now the economy is not in a good place. We don't want to put a further strain on our citizens. We can still bring it out of the general fund and just keep collecting that data. Because if we turn into an enterprise fund, it has to be self-sufficient. And then to be self-sufficient, that burden will go on to our taxpayers to pay those higher garbage collection fees to maintain that fund.
I was under the impression last year, part of the budget, there was like $100,000 more than what the public works required for the trash crew and all the expenses. It was definitely more than what we were slated to
Are
take
you
in.
referring to the, when they introduced the program to you, what they thought that they were gonna have?
Well, the budget, there's a section in the budget for trash,
Yes.
and it included all the expenses, and it was significantly less than what was gonna be collected.
Okay.
It doesn't include the trash
I would have to
truck.
go back and look at exactly what the revenue was. When I first looked at it, there would not be enough to cover operating expenses. Put a plan in to maintain and replace trash trucks in future years and to pay back those ARPA funds.
Okay, who was it? Was it Diane or who that told us?
It was probably when Diane rolled the program out, her initial projections. Some things that probably weren't looked at was delinquent accounts.
Is that significant?
It can be, yes.
Okay, I guess maybe we need some numbers to be able to make a better decision.
I'm happy to put something together if that's council's desire.
Is that something that council would be interested in without objection to have the town manager pursue that?
Pursue
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just asking, pursue what?
The trash, we were told we were gonna create an enterprise fund for the trash.
In 3 to 5 years, that's what they told us.
I don't recall it being 3 to 5 years, but
They indicated that it would take 3 to 5 years to get enough data, enough funds built up to make a enterprise fund so it could be self-sustaining. Am I right, Lisa?
Yes. But I am willing to put a report together for you guys on the first year's collection and the projection cost for the next 5 years, or we're looking at how to turn it into an enterprise fund, if you desire.
I think we should continue to keep tracking it, but we were definitely told it would take at least 3 years of data to go to the next step. So I don't want to get too premature in that, but I think we should, as always, still continue to keep tracking it.
well, can I ask this, are the excess funds, anything that's over the expenditures, are they going into an account or anything? Or how are we gonna build up the money you say we need to start this fund?
We can keep track of any excess revenue that was collected over the expenses for the refuse department. And we can not create its own bank account. We can actually commit those funds or restrict those funds in our audit and make sure that we keep track of that. And so as that builds up and we do turn it into an enterprise funds, those funds can be removed from the general fund into that new enterprise fund.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question for, as we get going, especially with new members on council. Do you have a timeframe where you would like us to, if we have requests for additional budget information? I know we don't have a preliminary budget yet, so it's a little premature, but a timeframe where you would like our request in. So, because I know last year, part of the problem was that we had the request for the, I think it was expenditures for contract services, like that. Do we want?
If any council member wants to send us any that are concluding, we are collecting, we did take everything that we learned last year. We are collecting information on contracts for professional services, so you'll have all that information. Like I said, we were working with our department heads to gather more information, so you have more information on what those expenditures are and what we're spending the money on, so you can make better decisions and not have to request this. So we're trying to get as much information for you so we can bring it to those 2-on-2 meetings. That way we can eliminate some of those last minute requests or whatever you would call them.
And during those 2-on-2 meetings, as we're going through the budget line by line, that would be a perfect opportunity to just bring any questions that you have so that we can research or incorporate within the budget.
We discussed at the strategic action plan meeting about creating a policy related to capital improvement funding. I think a majority of where our expenditures have been growing the fastest is capital improvement projects, and the fact that we have actually done several of them over the last 4 years, which was just not the case in a lot of instances before. And our capital needs, as we know on this agenda, we have our CIP next to talk about, is growing and continues to grow. And every time we talk about sidewalks, it grows. And every time we talk about drainage, it grows. And every time we talk about streets, it grows. So is there a timeline for having a draft policy that's with the information from Davenport and bringing that up for discussion? Is like April a good time? It's sort of parallel to this budget season. And in the past, we have been taking money in the black or the revenue after the audit, and then addressing CIP items that are the most prevalent or the most, timely, one at a time, adopting them, that funding, applying it to the CIP item, and then implementing that item once funding's applied. So this would be a more proactive approach in having a policy that would be planning for those items ahead of time.
We can, I do think we need a formal policy. We discussed a little bit during the strategic action plan, is to take any of those savings and setting some aside specifically into the capital projects fund. We can work with Davenport to come up with the draft policy. I think we should come up with a percentage that if we have excess funds at the end of the year that go roll into our reserves, instead of just leaving them in our general reserves, we actually put them into the capital improvements fund to be spent. It would be great to have a policy in place that we can follow, and anybody in my, after I leave can follow. So we can get put down for and have them help us draft something for your adoption.
Is April seem like a reasonable time frame for a draft policy?
I think
that's doable, yes.
Lisa, when did the clock start for it? Will be 3 to 5 years. Was it as of starting in 24 and forward, or?
Are you referring to the garbage?
For the
Yes.
enterprise?
So we started the program in fiscal 24.
Okay.
So we've already gone through one whole year. We're about halfway through the second year, so yes.
Okay, just give us a number. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on budget update process at this point? All right, more to come on that. All right, next up is the review of the capital improvement plan. 2026 to 2030. Darla, are you gonna read us in on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Ms. Tucker, we're going to talk now about the capital improvement plan. This is a final draft for you, fiscal year. Capital improvements scale. They can involve multiple phases of acquisition or development and funding, and they result in economic construction, acquisition, and or extension of capital assets over time. The capital improvement plan is for a 5-year period. So just a little bit about this year's preparation. And as I lead into this, I want to let you know that as I skip to the next slide, I brought this up here because I want to make sure I can read it. Yes, if you're development involved in a working committee. Members of the working committee are Ms. Tucker, the town manager, Chris Rutke, the director of public works, Chief Parsons, myself, and also the committee, the CIP committee, and the member of the plan on the CIP committee is Nathan Howell. And so this is the group that began initial discussions as in with the comprehensive plan of how this process has worked in the town before. And if you'll, next slide, please. The CIP process is the Code of Virginia. The Code of Virginia requires that a CIP, capital improvements plan, be prepared annually to carry out the state code sections 15.2, 22, 39 requires that a local planning commission, as it's directed by council, prepare this annual capital improvement plan, and that it would be based on a 5-year period. The town's comprehensive plan identifies that the citizens of the town and have consistently communicated that town infrastructure should be a high priority. And in looking at the capital needs, the comprehensive plan identifies how these will be identified, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. But I wanted to say to you that the capital needs, as many of you know, can take the form of new buildings, roads, equipment and vehicles, stormwater conveyance channels, water and wastewater distribution and treatment facilities, as well as improvements to ensure resiliency and safety with rising water levels and potential flooding events. Undertaking these capital needs and assets requires extensive planning, coordinated execution, and considerable financial investment. If you will switch for me, Heather. The next slide is kind of to let you know for this year, what the process was. But I will tell you, if department heads work for you, work for the town manager, this says, well, the committee met in October to talk about the CIP and the needs to begin the proposed needs within the town. And I'm sure you already know this. This is an ongoing conversation. It doesn't start in October. The department heads and those in the larger capital facilities that you have in the town think about this on a daily, weekly basis. So I just wanted to throw that out there so that you can appreciate that this is something that's always on their mind. Improvements anyway, this working committee met in October. We reviewed some of the ideas and from a town staff perspective, the department heads, what those need. And with a follow-up working committee meeting and, refined the needs and also this year how the CIP at the direction of the Planning Commission, which was a great idea. Thompson offered that the CIP really should include a good narrative so that when someone's reading the plan, hopefully it means on a particular line. But anyway, prepared. It was presented to the Planning Commission at their meeting in December. At their meeting, their department heads were present and they questions from the commission, reviewed the needs that they had, and the Planning Commission scheduled a public hearing on the CIP at their January meeting on the 9th. And the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of this year's CIP to council. And so you have that in your packet this evening. Oh, if you would do the next, when I switch slides, y'all excuse me, when I switch the slide on my computer, I think it's switching up there. So the comprehensive plan that you have for the town does offer guidance to you. And this is the guidance that we've used in preparation of this plan. And that is that the town should identify the needs from the comprehensive plan, the town manager, department heads, and citizen input. The town's portion of funding should primarily be derived from the sale of town-owned properties, grants, or the utility may be necessary for tax revenues and or debt obligations for some of those expenses. The plan recognizes that all capital improvements really are designed to and general welfare of Colonial Beach citizens. Plan sets that there's a $50,000 minimum for physical assets to be reported and a $20,000 minimum for programs to be reported. Next slide, please. So I'm bringing the plan to you from the Planning Commission. The next step, the discussion of the budgetary needs and impacts with the financial advisors. The Planning Commission recognized that they voted on include a total of expenses over the 5-year period. And we do have an additional sheet that's going to be CIP that and be a little bit more detailed once we do work with the financial advisors. But that will break down the budgetary needs or budgetary for the 5-year period and how that would be best broken of that information from previous discussions and the work that this committee has done. So that's going to be forthcoming. That will also, there's going to be work that's going to be needed when, the financial needs are there to prioritize some projects. Prioritizing of the projects in the CIP draft of the plan based on the guidance of the comprehensive plan. As I'm sure you've seen, the projects have been identified as being a general welfare issue, an environment. So as you look at those, obviously health, safety, environmental issues are a higher prioritization from the draft that you have, priority over the more general welfare type projects or needs. And then will be approved by council as part of the, but we're not looking for that at this point, but would certainly welcome or receive any input or questions. Next slide, please. Submitted the draft. I put the draft, you can switch to the next. If you want to talk about any of the specifics, I just have that in here. So I'll let that be up to you. We can, want to go on to next slide. Next slide. Yeah, that was it as far as what I had, but like I said, we can definitely back up if you have specific questions about the line items and the plan itself. I guess do back up one slide, Heather. This is the page that deals with the utility funds, because the plan is broken down where, you know, the page 6, as you have it, this is the utility fund supporting projects. But I wanted to let you know that this plan, and at the beginning of the plan, there's some discussion on what is a CIP, where are we, that kind of thing. Then the next page sort of breaks down how you read this or what these various columns mean. If, you know, I'll answer any questions you have. You've got comments, and in the comments section, identify or provide a little description of what the project or the need is and where we know of either a funding source of a fiscal year that's impacted, now listed in the comments. That will be pulled out into this additional sheet that you'll get, which will be more of a budgetary tool. Years identified, and you'll be able, based on those fiscal years. And then funded by, you know, the CIP, some of these projects are long-term and some of them, and they're all. So if where they're known, they're identified, where they are, you know, the town is anticipating perhaps grants, or as you walk through creating a capital improvements fund, you know, how you'll fund some of these things. And then the total cost, and then the project type I talked about, like safety, health, safety, welfare, that kind of thing. And if we knew the stage of the project, that's also provided, but you'll see most of them in a planning phase. With that, I'll questions you might have.
Okay, yeah, this is just a first read of this document. This will
Yes.
come back to us, so I just want to, go ahead, Mr. Allison.
Question, there's just like police vehicles, it says 110 annually. Can we put on there like, that's 2 cars, like that kind of stuff?
Yes.
And like for the crew vehicles, for the sewer fund, it doesn't specify how many. I'm assuming it's 1, but just to itemize the list so we can kind of get an idea that we're spending $110,000 on 2 cars and not one
Yes.
SUV that's, you know, really decked out, you know, I don't know.
Yes, sir. With the department heads and get that,
That's, say that word for me.
Specifically?
Yeah, there you go. That way we know what we're paying for.
yes,
Yeah, there you
yes,
go.
sir.
Mr. Larson?
To Mr. Allison's comments, you mentioned the one-pager financial drill down. I'm interested on the identified need itself. To you guys about that. Is that intended to be included as well? So that we can, so we don't have to ask questions about whether it's 1 car or 2 car. And I don't want a spreadsheet. What I'm looking for is just a little bit. Is that something that's under consideration?
And when you say a little bit more detail, are you looking for like a memo or something from here or some explanations? Or you want it expanded beyond this would be for 2 vehicles. I need it because of for fleet replacement or, you know, a schedule.
Are you looking for like a priority list out of this?
More of a kind of a tear sheet for each project, right? That kind of tells you more specifically what it is, you know, why we need it, more than just help justification for doing it. Why do we want to spend on it? And why we want to spend the money now versus 5 years from now, just enough so that we can make better decisions as a council and it's that are being proposed in the plan.
Add to this conversation, we've anticipated providing more information for the requests on the CIP, and we have a template sent out to all of the department heads to include not so much as a narrative, but to explain the need, the reason for the need, and how that impacts a vote of yes or a vote of need. So we do have some we are already working on to provide that information.
Will that be, excuse me, will that be in the next draft that we see before we vote?
So when we present budget topic, yes, that will be included.
Okay.
As well as the breakdown, the spreadsheet, breakdowns of the when certain expenditures would be expected.
Sounds like you're gonna get more information for a public hearing on it. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. I'll go to Mr. Williams.
Mr. Larson, Mr. Ellison, about getting more information. Would it be possible to get like an example of what you plan to provide? That way, if council members have any concerns or would like a little bit more, they could tell you waiting until we get the whole thing and they're like, wait, we want it.
I can email council a blank template.
Okay. And also, I'd like to see priorities. I think that was mentioned. Are we going to see like a versus just, 3 or 4 pages of requests? Can we get with the town versus, nice to have things and
From a compliance with the comprehensive plan, the planning commission has given you a CIP that's recommended by the comprehensive. I do know that there's more involved in it. So from a budget standpoint, I think that the funding sources sheets with that identifying those.
okay. And then we're just kind of taking a first glance at this. I'd like to, during our budget process, and when we go through this, I'd like to go line by line versus in prior. Any questions about any of the items on here, and we just vote. I just want to give you advance notice that I'd like to go line by line as we talk about each item, and then if we have specific questions.
This is in addition to going over the.
This is like.
You mean so when we schedule it before the public hearing, you want to do that, or the date of the public hearing?
I think
Make sure we block out time and then.
as we're doing it, maybe the public hearing date's fine with me.
Okay.
That's with the rest of the council. Okay with that.
And just to add on to what Excel spreadsheet or whatever we have will help identify list as we go year by year. And we can understand what those pieces are that we got to identify those funds specifically for those.
I know I provided an example from the town of Orange that has a one sheet on every single CIP item. That was just for feedback of the questions we'll have. I thought that was met the level of expectations that I was thinking about, just so you know. The planning commissioner, Lee Thompson, works in the planning department at the city of Fredericksburg, and also they do a CIP process with a one pager for each identified need. So I know those have been discussed, and I know the town manager has access to both those. I did have a couple other comments before we tee it up. One is that I know this came commission in January and things are ever evolving and ever changing and stuff like that. So the sidewalk plan, which is a 5-year is required with ADA compliant. And it's obviously an expected capital need. And we have the funding amount and we have a couple of these items doesn't say it on this document. So like the town pier refurbishment, that's been $60,000 a year as we take and replace the pylons and replace the decking. And I think we're in year 3 for that, so that should say in progress. And
Correct.
also the resiliency stormwater has been adopted, so that should be complete. And the sewer list has me, I have, $5.7 million out of improvements that have to do with our sewer system. So I think there's some things missing on that would align with those funds, and those are definitely capital improvement. So there's just some initial feedback items, and as we get more information, maybe all those will get addressed, but.
And Madam Mayor, may I ask you a question? The funding sources that you're talking to relative to improvements and relative to the sidewalk mandates. When we were having this meeting about the CIP staff, part of the discussion was that we're going to be in a different line item in the budget. If you recall that, please.
We have the information for the sidewalks, and we are including that, those amounts that we need for each fiscal year into the budget. And the DEQ, WQIF fines that we have to pay, we have a schedule for that too. We are going to be including those in the budget. The CIP, we have to fund them. It's no.
I think it would do both those items more justice to the public instead of just in a 30-page tiny line item budget, because they are so significant to the capital needs and capital assets of the town that having this but identified on this seem relevant. Feedback.
Is there a way that we can reflect the fact that those items are going to source then and still CIP? So it's one document that shows all the capital improvements.
Well, if you want to put them on the capital improvement plan, you can identify that we've gotten the funding. Yeah, we can on the CIP.
Okay, so yeah, it's just.
And we can make that determination in the budget. Having them in the budget, a good idea. I maybe need to leave on the CIP. I think we'll have to talk about that a little bit more, but we already, the funds need to be spent.
Right.
I think we vacillated back and forth when we were having discussions, and then ultimately landed with items that definitely needed to be paid for in fiscal 26 on the budget, so that we could definitively
Yeah,
get
for me,
approval. But I understand your point. We can indicate where the funding is and then list them in the CIP.
Yeah, I think the budget having true impacts because of the CIP is exactly towards, we need to show the work, right? This is to the public, it's a public narrative. That's the whole point of the public process of the CIP. So we've got to be showing people these things are getting done and this is how they're. One of the other items that's having a progress report of prior year accomplishments as a part of the CIP, because we're not telling the story of all the things that have been done. And opportunity to do that while we talk about what our years, to also say, and we've done these things, which were heavy lifts. And that's all part of making that the public education about it and of those things too. Hey, look, we just replaced certain sidewalk 2 years ago, you know, we're not tracking that 1 year. And somebody new is asking the same question.
And to your point, this is why I wanted the CIP tied to the budget process so that they walk hand in hand for within that fiscal year.
There's a big reason to bring up these points, and I think that's a good public discussion. It's a great thing. And so this is all just to provide feedback. It's constructive criticism in that way, not meant to be a yeah. Yes, Mr.
Just wanted to clarify, so are you suggesting we get like kind of something similar to what we had last year that has the fiscal year and the amount that's actually available and what's spent, like something that we can see a whole picture?
I think that is what they're planning to do with this.
Yes.
What I got from that, but then I think referring to earlier was more like what Mr. Larson was suggesting, which is a one pager with a narrative to the item of each. What's the request department head or the planning commission or the council or whoever requests the item to be on there, holds them accountable to actually understanding the issue and being able to explain it.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and we're looping back around to sidewalks. Right, resolution 525, the appropriation of the funds for the first sidewalk cycle of the 5-year cycle, is that right? Yes. This was from the consent agenda, we moved it into regular business.
So this resolution is asking for movement of funds out of our reserve to move into the general fund for compliance with the ADA sidewalks. We're requesting $100,000 be moved from the reserves into the general fund so that we can comply with the ADA letter that we received. The 2 sidewalks identified for fiscal year 25 is 1 Irving Street. The second sidewalk is 128 Washington Avenue, which our public works crew have completed, but they are requesting funding just to replenish materials that was used in repairing those sidewalks.
Okay, we'll put a motion on the floor and then second, and we'll open it for discussion on this particular item.
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, so now it's open for discussion on the amendment to appropriate the funds from excess revenues to the sidewalk obligation. Yes, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I initially asked for Natasha for some additional information, but I think I have a pretty good idea what this project is. So that long list you wrote, that you provided, that you sent to ADA, has each section of sidewalk individually that's going to be replaced. And the cost you got was the estimate from the engineer of record for the town?
Correct.
Okay. So I feel fairly comfortable with that, considering that how that was done. So I guess I don't really need any more information on that piece. But let's see. One thing is I was going to ask, so this is going to be done by a contractor?
The Irving Street, yes.
One of the concerns that was raised when I'm talking to somebody that used to be on council is, might be a policy thing for the future, is if we put out there the amount of money that we're spending on projects, we're basically projecting to the business world, whoever may put in bids, how much we're willing to pay, like our maximum amount we're willing to pay. So I'm not sure how maybe we could reconsider this in the future, but Just throwing that out there, that we're saying we're willing to pay 100,000, we get people to come in and give us bids. They know how much we're willing to pay in advance.
Sure. The $100,000 is for two different projects, as Ms. Tucker was saying. Our public works crew has already done 128 Washington, and part of this $100,000 is to replenish the funds they've already spent out of their budget. So this $100,000 is not what we're saying we're going to pay for One Irving Avenue. We're going to put a request for bid out, and we're going to see. This money is just to have money in the budget, so when those bids come in, we've got money to start the project. We may have to come back and ask for more. We don't know yet.
Okay. So I was
It's
told
based on what the engineer.
I was told historically that, the town manager would come to the council and say, we want to do this project. Can we put out RFPs? And then they put them out, and what bids they get, they come back to the council and say, hey, we got 3 bids. You don't want to do this project, authorize the money. So that was the.
Yeah, I understand your concern. I think we may have to come up with a.
Well, this is different from a regular solicitation. You're correct. If this were a regular solicitation, we would not state a price. But this is due to a litigation request that we've received. And so the work product that we had to provide needed to include engineering estimates of the cost of those sidewalks.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. That helps.
Mr. Wood, did you have a question too?
No, I think it's pretty obvious that this covers mandatory expenses that we have to make. And I do believe Ms. Tucker addressed it last January. So seems kind of like a no-brainer to me that we need to go ahead and approve what we have to pay.
Okay, does that mean we're calling for a vote then?
That would be me.
I'll do a roll call vote just in case. Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. Larson?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Grandstaff?
Aye.
Sanford?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And, yeah. Okay, next up is, similar in, nature. This is of riprap and stand restoration, of multi-year plan for that. You want to read us into that, Ms. Tucker?
So resolution 0625 is requesting to amend and appropriate fiscal year 24-25 budget, $150,000 out of the reserve into the general fund to restore additional riprap and sand on the beach for this upcoming season. This project was identified in the previous fiscal year CIP, which was approved by council.
All right, we want to start with, again, a motion and a second, then we'll open it up for discussion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it is on the table and open. Mr. Ruckus, I didn't know he was not going to be here tonight.
No, he's been ill, so he isn't here this evening.
Okay. But the riprap and beach that happened last year where they added the rocks and then pushed the sand out to it, is that what we're talking about with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion on this item? Yes, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I did ask also for additional information from Ms. Tucker on this one. She wasn't able to provide it, like she said, the public works director's out sick. So do we know exactly what this project is? I was asking somebody that prior planning commission member that has experience with beach renourishment and projects such as that. And they suggested that we should have a full plan in place. We should know, like, say a 5-year plan of exactly what's going to happen. Have an engineer, design where the sand should go so that the sand just doesn't roll back out into the river. And as far as putting the riprap, it should be engineered versus like the last time they basically just piled rocks on top of the old riprap and it's like sticking up and jaggedy in different areas. I'm not sure if it was even done appropriately. So I just want to know, do we have any additional information we can provide council so that we know that exactly where this money's going and that we have an actual plan of how many years plan do we have for this project? Or do we need to wait for Chris to come back?
Chris can offer me with additional information when he returns, but I can tell you that this is an annual beach restoration event that has taken place, definitely since I have been here, in order to protect our beach, which is our #1 tourist attraction, I would say, for our town. So the placement of sand that erodes due to beach erosion and the placement of the rocks along the shoreline has been helping our beach when the erosion occurs and the sand just washes off into the river. In terms of plan, I don't think that we have an identified 5-year plan in store. I do know that we have annually restored the beach. And if we are looking at getting some sort of engineering report or employing an engineer to do that work, then that is going to be reflected as part of the budget and significant cost increase associated with that. Our public works team has done this annually, and I've not heard that their work has not been done satisfactorily. You brought it up to me yesterday.
When you say annually, wasn't last year the first year in several years?
For the riprap, yes. The beach nourishment has always been a case, but just to kind of bleed into that a little bit is the reason why we had the riprap is because, if I'm not mistaken, we had engineers that identified that to keep the beach there, we had to put those rocks there. Now, over the years, we've had storms, hurricanes, tidal issues, the 100-year storms, and what happens with rocks and mud is they sink, right? So we have to put more rocks on there to cover the break of the waves in order to save the beach. So yes, we need to add more rocks to keep that break from going over so the sand does not get washed away. And this is the way that we do that, by adding more rock and more sand.
Have we received an engineer opinion on that?
As in far as what? Adding more rock to
Yeah.
cover the break?
Yes.
I don't believe that we have an engineer that said that, but the engineer said that originally when we put the riprap there, just like every other.
And it was done by engineers, and it does have the size and location of the necessary riprap, which is underneath of the permit that we have for our shoreline there. I will say we're gonna get an engineer and re-engineer the public beach. That is gonna come with significant costs, which we have talked about tonight. Also, doing this in-house allows us to just stick within the boundaries of replenishment, which if we go with an engineer and change, potentially go with a whole nother route, is gonna require significant permitting. If you have not been down to our North Beach or the Irving Avenue Beach, this is pretty critical for this season. I mean, right now. Yeah, so if we're not gonna use the funds for public works to move forward with this maintenance at this time, not saying we can't get engineer plans in the future, which take a long time. But we do have a stormwater and resiliency plan now adopted, and it does talk about improvements to that area. It also includes $1 million to do it. So I think right now we're talking about our means, within our means, and that's the situation.
Well, the suggestion that was made to me was that we asked for possibly a university like ODU or some other university to come in within a year. They could provide a plan probably at covering 3/4 of the cost, and have an actual plan versus just throwing more sand on the beach and more rocks on the existing riprap.
Okay, hold on, I saw Ms. Sanford, so I want to make sure she gets her opportunity.
This is a big chunk of money, so I think just maybe for my peace of mind, it would be helpful to have at least some sort of like breakdown of where the expenses are and like maybe an invoice of everything that is going into these beach replenishment projects.
I was going to say, so $100,000 was approved in the CIP. We're asking for an additional $50,000 simply because we don't know the increase in the pricing that's occurred from the time that the CIP was approved and adopted to when we will go out and purchase the sand and the rocks. Anything that is left over remains in the general fund and goes into the reserves.
Okay, I saw Mr. Wood, then I saw Ms. Grandstaff.
We're gonna do the work in-house, so the cost is materials. The cost of an engineering firm would be a good deal more. We're, 2 months away from beginning the season. Again, this is something that we have to do. I think there was another comment that I was going to point out, that we have a second motion on the floor.
Okay, I'm gonna get to Ms. Grandstaff.
Just have a quick question. The sand, have we ever pursued the idea of like using sandbags or sand trap bags along with the rock, or is it usually just loose sand and the rocks? Because I've seen where the sandbags or trap sandbags have been used in other beach locations to help with erosion as part of the riprap prevention or solution.
So if I remember correctly, I think I remember the Public Works Director stating that they've tried sandbags and those did not work as well. And so the loose sand is what is used.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion? We don't see. We'll talk to you after. You can always get with the town manager. This is just an approval for the funds. That's all it is at this moment, and there's still implementation to go.
Yeah, I was just wondering if y'all have.
Sir, I'm gonna have a point of order. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Williams.
Final comment, just like Maggie mentioned, we should, at council, we should at least have the areas that they plan on repairing in general. If it's gonna be done in-house, somebody's already given figures, so we should be able to have access to those as council, so we can make a better decision on how we spend $150,000.
So
Final
since
comment.
$100,000 was already approved, are you then asking just to approve that amount and not the additional 50?
Well, I'm not sure if I agree with the 100,000 being approved. That was the CIP. The CIP also included a $10 million municipal center. So obviously you're not going to go out tomorrow and build a municipal center.
We're not
So
speaking about a municipal center, we're
it's a
speaking
wish.
about.
My point is though, this is a wish list. As we've said for many years, this is not, most of these things are not funded. So we did not approve the funding of it. We just, as a body, we approved the CIP, which contains like 50 items.
Mr. Williams, would you like to make an amendment to the motion or vote on the motion?
I'd like to make an amendment or to postpone this until we get additional financial information, and we can also speak with the Director of Public Works. I mean, it's not going to be, it's not an emergency that I know of, so it wouldn't hurt to at least.
Do you know when the timeline of is when they have to start?
I'm not sure of the timeline for if there are any logistics concerns with timing of delivery and the delivery of the materials. So that is also something that I would need to check on in terms of the timing of the approval.
All right, I'm gonna go back. Mr. Williams has an amendment to the motion. Is there a second to the amendment to the motion? Okay, it's been seconded. So right now, we're gonna vote on just the amendment to the motion, which is to postpone the vote, okay? All right, that's all we're voting on right this second, then we'll go back to the original amendment, okay? All right, Mr. Wood?
Nay.
Mr. Larson?
We're voting on which, sorry?
Just the amendment to postpone the vote.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Okay, Ms. Grandstaff?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hauser?
No.
I vote aye. It'll postpone to the next regular meeting. And hopefully Chris will be here for that because I think that would answer a lot of questions that we have tonight. Okay, and with that, we're gonna have a closed meeting. So I'm just gonna read the language and then we'll take a quick recess. We're gonna move that the town council of the town of Plain Beach, Virginia, convene a closed meeting for the following purposes and discuss the following subjects, all of which are exempt by Virginia law from public meeting requirements as indicated, namely pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7 and 8 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to existing litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the town council and consultation with legal counsel retained by the town council regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such legal counsel. So moved. Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, all right, we'll take that 10-minute recess and we'll go into closed session. Thank you.
Thank you.
I already put my name on mine, I'm kidding, just kidding.
All right, so is there a motion to reconvene an open meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion to certify that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by council? I need a motion.
So moved.
I need a second. Okay, and then I need individual certification.
I so certify.
I so certify.
I so certify.
I still certify.
I so certify.
I so certify.
So certify, is there a motion to approve the resolution approving settlement rising out of the BZA?
So moved. Second.
Okay, do I need a per person vote? Yeah, let's do that just to make sure. Okay, Ms. Greenstaff? How do you vote? Uh-huh. Aye. Ms. Sanford? Mr. Allison? Aye.
Aye.
And aye. And is there a motion to direct the planning commission to address matters of tree management?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I think I got a lot of seconds. Everybody second that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.
Yay.
Aye.
All in favor? Everybody's adjourning. It's 8:38 PM.